Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and horror. Today we will delve into the history and secrets of Laan, a vampire who terrorized the wild space and was brought by the mist to the demiplane of Dread, and who is the only known official connection between the classic Spelljammer and Ravenloft settings. Before we start, I know that after this long hiatus in the videos, you might be wondering what the space vampire Laan has to do with our narrative and search for the missing Dr. Rudolf van Richten. The answer is nothing. Rest assured, the old monster hunter is not lost in space. At least I believe he is not. And soon we shall resume our journey through the land of the mists and discover new horrors and domains. The video about this little known character comes at this moment for a special reason, which is also the cause of my little hiatus in publishing the videos. For some time now, some friends and I have joined forces for a project, and we created the Black Feather, a label to release new materials for Ravenloft in the DM's Guild. Our project aims to create quality content that explore new ideas and proposals, without forgetting the vast tradition and materials from the classic setting. Along with me in these projects are the great scholars of the mists, Leandro Zerbinati, who for a long time ran the late Brazilian Ravenloft website under the nickname of Lucifer Abaddon, Pedro Vá from the channel Rajada Mística, and Rafael Castelo Branco from the page Meus Pergaminhos, all fellow members of the Ravenloft team of the Brainstorm cast. Although we already have a project focused on the classic Ravenloft setting in progress, with the launch of Spelljammer for 5th edition, the idea came up of creating a book with new domains of Dread, with space themes, connecting two classic D&D settings that until then had very little in common. Spelljammer is a unique D&D setting, and at first glance it doesn't look anything like the Ravenloft's gothic horror proposal. Space, however, is the perfect lair for many horrors, as every sci-fi and horror fan can attest. What was intended to be a small product of a few pages, with just 2 or 3 domains, soon expanded into a full project with 10 different domains with Dark Lords and their stats, which can be used either isolated or as a large cluster of space domains, the Dread Space, which gives our book its name. Arriving just in time for Halloween, I hope our book can take you on macabre adventures through space. The book is now available at DM's Guild, both in English and Portuguese, and we will leave the links below. This is our first project, and we would love to hear your impressions and feedback. Among the 10 domains that we'll cover in our book, we have some old acquaintances that have been reimagined, such as the domain of Bloodspoor, inserted in the moon of the skies of the demiplane of Dread, that now has the gothic background and curse of the god brain detailed. Another domain, Claw, integrates the idea briefly presented in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft with the character Claw from the classic setting, describing the terrible nebula spiral of mists where forgotten domains are dragged to destruction by the evil ghost of the insane clockmaker. Some domains are original creations, inspired by the most diverse sources of horror and science fiction, or adapting characters and themes from the Spelljammer setting for the horror of the demiplane of Dread. The Void Gate is a vast domain dealing with cosmic horror, and has as its Dark Lord an insane Mercane obsessed with the mysteries of the alien civilization of the Juna. The Bone Reef is a secret pirate spaceport built on the skeletons of Kindoris, and commanded by Valgra the Heartless, a cruel Skrull vampire. The planet Tawasan is inspired by the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and where the druid and leader of an elven kingdom merged her conscience with nature, to avoid the devastation caused by the inhuman wars, and now gradually is replacing the population with podlings under her command. Jaharka, the red moon of nightmares, can appear in the sky of any other domain and bring unwary dreamers unwittingly to a battleground between two warring Dark Lords. Hysterica, the asteroid of insane laughter, where the evil jester Ponzor leads his demonic troop of space clowns. The cursed ships, Chinaras, a living ship created from the body of a crazed Trent that now spread its corruption across the cosmos, and the Dread Destroyer, inspired by the book Moby Dick, a ghost ship with a gift captain, obsessed with hunting and destroying a gigantic space monster. Finally, we created the domain of Varian, to house the character Laan, the space vampire, who is the only official pre-existing connection between the classic Ravenloft and Spelljammer. In this frozen world, the population must resist not only the cold, but a constant and dangerous plague of vampires, as in the book and movie I Am Legend, or in the comics and movies 30 Days of Night. This video will not delve deep into the material we created for Varian and Laan, but will be focused on the canon story of this intriguing character and how he came to be trapped in the mists of the demiplane of dread. Are you ready? Then settle at your posts, for the captain has already addressed the helm of this vessel toward the stars. Who can tell what dark horrors inhabit the wild space, where no one will hear our screams? Hour of Raven. Mortals, have you truly come all this way only to die? Time is on my side. Long after your grandchildren are dead in their graves, I will walk the land still. You cannot defeat me. I am eternal. Chilla is a character introduced as the main villain of the Crystal Spheres module, released for the Spelljammer campaign setting in 1990. He was once a half-elf from the world of Toril, but turned into a vampire after a macabre pact and became a space traveler, bringing terror and death on his travels. He is tall and has extremely pale white skin, and his evil eyes often emanate fury or contempt. He wears long, shoulder-length black hair, with a characteristic white streak that starts at his left temple. He always dresses in loose clothes, usually in the black, gold and purple colors, typical of a space traveler. Around his neck is an amulet with the symbol of a gauntlet. Laan was once a diplomat and a bard, and is eloquent, polite and charming when he chooses. However, he sees all living creatures as lesser form of existence, and most are nothing more to him than cattle. His contempt for life causes him to have a deep hatred for the living, and he delights in causing pain and destruction. But he is also intelligent and experienced, and does not tend to act impulsively or irrationally in his destructive desires. Laan is a vampire over 300 years old, and is classified as an ancient vampire. While the Crystal Spheres adventure doesn't feature a custom sheet and stats for Laan, referring to him only by the vampire's inscriptions in the monster book, using Van Richten's Guide to Vampires can help you give the character more abilities and powers, making him a unique villain. As an ancient vampire, he can only be harmed by powerful magical weapons, and can exert his vampiric domination with his gaze or the mere sound of his voice. He can command beasts in his vicinity, but on the dead planet of Varian, Most of the creatures that answer his calls are undead beasts. He is also able to change his form to assume an animal or gaseous form at will, and can climb walls as if under the effect of the spider climb spell. His body regenerates very quickly, and he is an experienced bard, possessing spells of great power at his disposal. Furthermore, his pact with a macabre entity has given him great necromantic gifts, and he is able to create powerful undead and exert his command over them. The mighty Chilla has grown more resistant over the years, and can go long periods without drinking blood, and even withstand contact with sunlight for a brief period. It is known that the amulet he possesses is a magical item that allows him to teleport back to his castle, the Tower of Night, on the planet Varian. Although the book Crystal Spheres does not provide further details about what happens, it is said that he might have been dragged by the mists and the dark powers to the demi-plane of dread at the end of his confrontation with the heroes. There is no official information, however, on what could be his domain like, and what powers and torments he would have as a Dark Lord. But what prompted Chilla to draw the attention of the Dark Powers and imprison him in the demi-plane of dread? The real name of Chilla was Dorin, and he was a half-elf from the nation of Aglarond in the planet of Toril. His family was one of the original settlers of the land, and he became one of the main advisors of General Brindor Olisine. A trusted advisor, he became responsible for peace negotiations with the armies of Ingdal that resulted in the unification of the realm of Aglarond under the rule of their first king, Brindor. The rise of the nation of Aglarond was a problem for the powerful nation of Thay, and the Red Wizard decided to take action to disrupt the politics of their new neighbors. A group of assassins were hired to strike political targets, and they surprised Dorin and his wife while they were strolling through the gardens. Dorin fought the attackers, but was mortally wounded. As he lay dying, his once peaceful heart was filled with hate, and he begged to any power who could answer him to allow his chance for revenge. He then made a bargain with death and drank the blood of his attackers, rising again as a vampire, a creature of the night. He also gained the secret of necromancy and became able to raise the dead to his command. Dorin extracted his revenge against his enemies, but nothing seemed to satisfy his hate-filled heart. When he returned to Aglarond, he discovered that his fellow allies would not tolerate him as a vampire, and his rejection only increased his hate against all. It was then he decided to murder his former self and search for a new life. He no longer was the peaceful and friendly Dorin, but would become Chilla, a feared conqueror. Determined to experience his undead existence to the fullest and satisfy his dark desires, he began a rampage of violence and death. It is not known how, but in his travels he found some way to travel into space in a Spelljammer vessel, and carried the terror of his existence into the wild space. In the darkness of space, the vampire has become a conqueror. He survived the time of many lives in different worlds, traveling through space and becoming a harbinger of death, despair, and destruction. After years of traveling through space, Laan found the distant crystal sphere known as Dark Space. There, he found the world of Varian, a world teeming with life that still endured the last days of its fading and dying star. The backward civilization that lived on that planet did even know about magic or spell-jamming vessels, and were isolated from contact with the other worlds. he took residence in that world and became their terror. Chilla fed on the population as he pleased, and took little care about destroying their bodies or about creating new vampires. Soon other vampires began to rise from the grave, and without guidance, they also began to transform more people as vampires. The vampire infestation spread through the world, and the people began to battle the monsters, forming groups of vampire hunters. Their reaction was not enough, as the vampires struck back with brutal retaliation, in what became known as the Time of Death. Thousands were murdered by the vampires, and many rose as undead monsters thirsting for blood. After a few years of conflict, the plague of vampires destroyed the world of Varian. The vampires were the majority, and the surviving living creatures were hunted and disputed by the vampires. When all life from Varian was decimated by vampires, the Age of Blood began. Vampire hunted vampire in a desperate need of blood. Chilla watched all of the destruction take place with fascination. But he soon felt the need for blood and began to hunt down his own kind. A monster to the monsters, he destroyed hundreds of his kind every night, and he became stronger. Chilla was already hundreds of years old, but was now capable of resisting long times of blood starvation, and even walking for little periods under the weak sun of that world. The terror of his own kind. Many undead were destroyed by Chilla. The vampire master began to grow tired of this routine, however. After centuries of existence, his mind began to feel the effects of his ancient age, and not even the pleasure he took in destroying and feeding on his kind brought him any joy. Many vampires don't survive this mental transformation of old age. Chilla became more lethargic and depressed, and without drinking blood for long periods, he sought a deep underground tomb of his castle, and entered a deep torpor and coma, leaving behind a world destroyed, where vampire hunted vampire. He does not know for how long he slept, but after many years, he finally woke from his coma. He began to regain conscience, and find the will to rise once more. Moving slowly and lethargic, he rose from his deep underground tomb, with a new purpose in his undead existence. He found Varian an even more desolate place, and from the thousands of vampires, only 30 remained. He hunted and drank their blood, and fully restored, he began his plans of mass conquest and domination. The planet was still able to sustain life from the weak warmth and light of the crimson dying sun of dark space, and he decided to make Varian the center of his empire. He used his necromantic powers to raise the dead populations as servants and soldiers, and found once more his old spelljamming ship to search for a new destination. He eventually reached the sphere of great space and landed on the planet of Thessalis. The prosperous planet was ruled by the noble house Chambrat, and Chilla assumed a false identity of a bard. After he gained the opportunity to present himself to the royal family, he gained the attention and favor of the king, and became the court bard. He used his vampiric powers of suggestion and manipulation over them, and rapidly became the king's most trusted advisor. He protected his false identity for many years, until he decided the time for taking was right. He advised the king to enter in war with nations from a distant sphere, and then planned the assassination of King Gorat, and managed to blame his only son and heir, Ruin, for the crime. While he reveled in the power and chaos, he sabotaged the travel plans of spelljamming ships, to lead them to dark space. He charmed the pilots and made several ships of Thessalians that were traveling to support the war effort to diverge from their path and crash on the planet Varian. There they would be imprisoned and kept as personal livestock for the vampire. The heir of the Thessalian throne, Ruin Shambrat, discovered the evil influence of Chilla and managed to escape from his planet and seek help from adventurers. Together, they returned to Thessalis to fight the vampire. When Laan was about to be defeated, he used his amulet to be teletransported back to Varian in dark space, but the heroes hunt him down and destroy him in his lair. However, before Laan was exterminated, the dark powers of Ravenloft decided to take him to the demiplane of Dread. Here ends the official account of Laan's story, and his further connection to the Ravenloft setting was never officially developed in any other D&D product. The character had other unofficial adaptations for Ravenloft, as in the article about the Tekka domain that can be found in the netbook Court of the Raven issue 22, domains that came before, on the Fraternity of Shadows website, and which adapted his domain as part of the core of Ravenloft, before the events of the Grand Conjunction. In our version of Varian's domain, in the Dread Space book, after his defeat at the end of the Crystal Spheres adventure, Laan awoke in his crypt in the Tower of Night, not understanding what happened to him. His domain was the frozen wasteland of Varian, under the scarlet dying sun still shining in the skies. Everything seemed to be untouched, and he did not find his enemies anywhere, but he realized that many years had passed in his torpor, and discovered New Thessalis, a community formed by the survivors of the crash of the ship, which he had redirected to this world to become his blood cattle on this planet. In our version, Laan is cursed by the dark powers. In addition to being trapped in this frozen world, he finds that the blood of mortal victims now causes him great revulsion, and only the blood of other vampires satisfies him. He must now carefully control the balance of his domain, and must create vampires to feed on them, but prevent the resilient mortal population of this frozen world from being destroyed by the vampiric plague. With his plans of conquest and destruction forever thwarted, he must now struggle to maintain the delicate balance between the mortals he despises and the vampires who feed him, or he would soon become the sole inhabitant of this dead planet, destined for an eternity of boredom and loneliness. So, what did you think of this curious character from the Spelljammer setting, and our ideas for creating a space-themed domain of Dread? Let us know what you think in the comments. We would love to hear your impressions of the book too. Join us, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. And in our next video, we will resume our exploration of the Lands of the Mist domains and characters, as we search for the missing Dr. Rudolf van Richten.